What is your story? And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to buy into the belief that people need to hear your story and they are willing to pay you to hear your story. Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 2 of She CEO Inspires with Yakinia Marie. This is Yakinia Marie, and I'm excited to welcome you to this particular episode. Today is all about your story. And so today I'm going to focus on talking about your story, how you can turn your story, your book into a business. Now, myself personally, I have 8 books, and my first book was centered around my story. The whole book wasn't about my story. The book is entitled The Strength of a Woman. The purpose of that book for me was to teach women or to reintroduce women to their purpose and their power. But I shared my story because I lost, well, I won't even say I lost. I felt like I lost or did not discovered my power because of all of the mess that I have previously gone through over the years of my living. And so when I came out of some things, I began to understand some how-to ways and methods in order to win at life and overcome low self-esteem, insecurity, rejection, and all the stuff I was going through. So I wrote that particular book. All right. And then I began hosting conferences and around the book. So today I want to talk to you, our authors, if you're currently an author, or our aspiring authors, those who desire to write a book, or maybe you haven't even thought about it. But now that you see this podcast, you're like, you know what? I have a story to tell, and I have a story that will add value to the lives of individuals. So today we're talking about how to turn your story, your book, into a business. And you may say, a business? Would people pay me? Yes, they would pay you, because people, they want to be happy. They want to be joyful. They want to feel like they're winning at life. They want to be free of people's opinion of them. And if you can show them how to win, whether you're showing them practical tools, tips on business, or whether you're showing them life tools and tips, regardless of what it is, they want to know, and they will pay you intentionally in order for you to show them. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about this because I feel like it's value. Personally, I believe we all have a story to tell, whether you're afraid to tell it or not. We all have a story to tell. And I remember when I was writing my first book in 2000, and I started it in 2012, like December, and I finished it within 3 months, like February, something like that, 2013. And I was like really thinking through my chapter. I was overthinking it. I really was. But I had to really think through, what is my story? And I want you to just write that down. Number one, what is my story? Because we have so many stories, but what is that story that you want to build everything else upon? What is your story? Whether your story is centered around stepping out and starting your first business, because your story doesn't have to be a sad, like, I overcame poverty story. It can be a story where you stepped out and you was excited about this first business and you wanted to show people tips on how to step out in spite of fear or in spite of limitations or lack. Okay. So what is your story? Whether your story is starting your first venture, overcoming abuse, rebuilding your life after divorce, having your first child, and the power of parenthood. So regardless of what your story is, what is your story? Okay. What is your story? And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to buy into the belief that people need to hear your story and they are willing to pay you to hear your story. First of all, I want that's a mindset because if you go in thinking that no one wants to hear your story and no one will spend money with you, then you're defeated up front. Okay. So what is your story? What is your story? Okay. And regardless of how many stories you have, what is that story that you would like to build everything else on? Okay. Like one of my stories that I often tell, and I have a lot of them, but my key story that I tell is overcoming a life as an exotic dancer and a drug trafficker, right? Now I have business stories, I have parenting stories, I have, overcoming low self-esteem stories, but that is like the foundation. Why? Because that right there was vital to me becoming who I am. And what I mean by that is that I dealt in a level of identity crisis for years as a dancer, right? And as a drug trafficker. And I was totally unaware of that. And then when I had my divine encounter with God and decided to leave that life and cross over into the things of God on the journey, because it was a journey that I'm still building today, it began to introduce me to myself. First of all, it began to show me how insecure I was because when I was in the world and doing all this stuff, I was confident, I was bold, I was cursing people out and all that. I don't curse now, but back then I was fighting, not all the time, but I was a fighter, So when I came over here, I had to really deal with why I went through that. Why did I allow that? Why did I, you see what I'm saying? And so I began to meet myself on this other side, and so all of it led me to the place that I am today, on that particular path. So I want you to think about your own personal story. What is that? What is that thing that you had to navigate through? You had to overcome, you had to build upon. What is that thing? What is the what? That's the number one. I want you to ask yourself, what is that? And I want you to take a moment and I want you to write that down. And then number two is the value. When you look at your story, what can you pull out of your story that will add value to others? I have had the honor of facilitating 4 collaborations, being a part of one with someone else, but me personally facilitating 4 collaborations. And one of them was the I Am Woman Volume 1, I Am Woman Volume 2, I Said Yes, and She CEO Let's Go. Okay. And I oftentimes ask the collaborative authors to write their story, but then share some tips with the reader. Right? Show them how to get to that place that you're at now, or that on that journey that you're on now. Right? So you're not going to just leave them down in the muck of, yes, I went through abuse and I'm mad and I'm whatever. Okay. How did you come out of it? What shifted your mindset? What caused you to raise your standards where you would never accept a level of abuse or no abuse again, right? And so what value, I want you to ask yourself, what value can I pull from my story, and not just tell my story, but to show my story? Right? You want individuals to be able to visualize, literally put themselves in the book that they're reading, or the audio that they're listening to, or the video that they're viewing. You want them to literally be able to see themselves in your story. Right? When you want to paint the picture, when you're writing a story, you want to paint the picture. When you're verbalizing the story, you want to paint the picture of your story. And then you also want to provide tools that they can walk away with. Implementable steps that they can implement and walk away with and get some results as a result of. I will say this. I remember when I came out of that life I was in, and one of the things that really I'll say geared and guided me was being connected to a church and a community of believers that didn't judge me and gave me room to grow, right? And being connected to individuals that was willing to teach me how to study, what to read, how to understand the word, how to pray, or what prayer was or is. And I began to implement those things, and it began to show up in my life. Okay. And so number one is, what is your story? And then number two is, what value can I pull from my story that others can apply to their life? And your story may be something like cooking. Okay, let me give you an example. You may absolutely love to cook, love to bake, I could cook some dishes. Okay. I'm not like no genius at cooking. Okay. But you won't be hungry. But as far as baking from scratch, that's not my gift, right? I'm sure I can read a recipe, but that's not my gift. So you have some individuals, they don't even have to look at measurements. They just put all the ingredients in and it comes out tasting like gold. And so maybe you use cooking as a way, as a means of therapy, right? Where you get in the kitchen, you start cooking, and when you start cooking, it's like everything around you just silence itself, and it takes you to a place where it's a calming place for you, right? And not only are you benefiting from it, but your family and friends are benefiting from it as well, because you supply these goodies to them. So you're telling this story of how you're utilizing cooking in order to take yourself, your mind, to a whole nother place, right? But in addition to that, I'm going somewhere with this. So you're teaching them how to utilize their skill set to go to a peaceful place when everything seems to be chaotic around them, but you're also giving them your recipes, right? So you're showing them 1, 2, 3, how this is helping me. But in the meantime, do you some taste testing and get you some yummy yum yum while you are taking yourself to a whole nother place. Like me personally, I love listening to worship music. I love walking in the park, listening to personal development. I love listening to jazz that doesn't have any words to it, just the instrumentals, saxophones, different things like that. I love listening to that. Why? Because that takes me into like a quiet, calm place. You understand? It just takes me to a place, right? So you helping people to quiet their minds down from all the busyness, all the running, all the hustle, all the bustle, right? But you teaching them how to add themselves to the calendar, how to take out time for themselves, how to respect the appointment that they set with themselves, and now not allow anyone to interrupt that appointment. Right? So you doing that because why? Because you are doing that. So I really want you to really deep dive into your story and say, I'm not just writing this story for people to read. I'm writing this story to alter and transform the lives of the readers. That will help you deliver your story more strategically and intentionally. Because it's not just about pushing a story out there and telling a story, but the goal is, how do I show the story and how do I help individuals get something that they can implement in their life? So I want you to look at that. Then I want you to ask yourself this question: who is my audience? Who is my audience? Okay, who is my audience? I know when I wrote the book, The Strength of a Woman, although anybody can read it, all women, all men can actually read this book. But I knew that book was for the woman who felt stuck, who felt stagnant, who felt confused, who felt like she had given up her whole life for the sake of her family, who was consumed with obligations and pushed her visions and goals and dreams and desires to the side, and really just helping her navigate through how to love on her family, but not lose herself in the process, and how to come back from that place of a dormancy, because maybe she was dormant for a minute and for the sake of her children, for the sake of her spouse, for the sake of ministry, or whatever the case may be. All right. And so I knew that my audience were women but not just necessarily all women, but those women who just was ready to go to another place in themselves. Okay. And so I want you to ask yourself, who is your audience? Who is your audience? What is their need? What is their pain point? What is their desire? Because this is going to help you deliver your story, whether you're writing your story, whether your story is video, whether your story is audio on a podcast. What is your story? What is the value you're pulling from your story? And who is your audience? Who is your audience? Who is your audience? Who, now, by default, you're going to have everybody reading your book, but there are some people you are strategically writing to. And who is that? Who are those people? Who are those people? What do they look like? What are they looking for? What is their need? What do they desire? What are they searching for? I want you to ask yourself that question, okay? And then I want you to think through this. I want you to think through, how can you expand your reach? How? I'm like reaching at you. How can you expand your reach to your audience? Now, there is a resource. If you click the link that I provided below, above or below, there's a resource that I provided called Create 7 Income Streams Around Your Brand Doing What You Love. All right. Not just creating something just for the sake of money, but you're doing what you love. You're doing what you feel like you're called to do. And you're not, and this is not necessarily 7 different streams. 7 different things that you're doing, but it's 7 streams around one thing that you're doing. Okay. And so you taking your story, and let's say you're delivering your story in a book, right? So this is a book for the readers, but you're also delivering your story in a workshop style. And then you're also delivering your story as a mastermind with a group of collective people who want you to work with them intimately. Okay. And so I'm just giving you multiple ways that you can literally take your one story and you can multiply it and multiply your reach. So when you multiply your reach, you're not only multiplying your reach, but you're also multiplying your impact, and you're multiplying your revenue. And this right here can be a full-fledged business that you are running. And it's all about you helping individuals who are currently in a situation that you are winning at, and you're showing them how to come out of it and to win because of it. And you are giving them step-by-step tips and tools and strategies on how to do that. Now, is there a business that you can wrap around your story? Absolutely it is. But you have to know that up front, with no doubt that somebody needs your story. Someone needs your story, and you have something to say. And guess what? And people will pay you for it as well. So remember, you can build a business around your story. You can build a business around your book. You just have to identify what your story is, what value you will pull from that story, who you will serve in the process. And then you want to think through, how can I expand my reach? Okay, how can I expand my reach, not just with this book, but how can I turn this book into multiple platforms that will touch people in various ways? Okay, because you have some people that may not buy the book at first, but they may come to your workshop or your conference or your coaching program that you release. And then they say, oh, I wasn't even aware of the book. And then they get the book, right? Because you can actually make the book a workbook that they're working from as well. All right. So make sure that if you have yet to download the Create 7 Income Streams Around Your Brand Doing What You Love, make sure that you do that. And then also make sure that you answer the questions that I ask in regards to what is your story. And even if you are currently an author, I want you to look at your story in a different way. Okay, I want you to look at your story as a business, if that's what you desire to build in regards to business. So listen, I'm excited. Thank you for joining me for episode 2 of She CEO Inspires here with Yakinia Marie. I'm excited, and may you tell your story with boldness, intentionality, and may you make a great impact on a global scale.